Hi there everyone, your Pal here with another vlog. So I'm going to be doing the My Hero Academia Season 7 recap. I typically do these at the end of each season, plus like at the end of the movies, whenever I watch them. But yeah. Of course, there's going to be spoilers for the events of Season 7. And if you're going to talk about My Hero Academia, don't talk about anything past Season 7, because I don't know what happens afterwards. I have not been paying attention to the manga, except for I know that it ended, but I don't know how it ends. I don't know what happens beyond where I'm at, so yeah. And overall, I really did like Season 7. Not sure how I feel about it compared to Season 6, because I really liked Season 6. I'd even say it's probably my favorite season so far, with Season 3 being another really good one, but this is probably, I would say this is in the top 3, maybe, with those other two that I listed, but yeah. A lot of intense moments in this season, and it starts off with a bang, so I'm going to be looking at this notepad document because there's a lot that happens in Season 7, and it likes to jump all over the place, so it's very difficult to keep up, but yeah. The first few, I think the first 2 episodes actually, focus on this hero called Star and Stripe, who was teased at the end of Season 6. She is the #1 hero in the US, and she arrives in Japan to fight Shigaraki. We get to see her quirk in action. Her quirk, I don't know what it's called, I already forgot, but it's a very cool quirk because she can basically make 2 rules happen when she speaks them, and she basically uses this in tandem with, like, or she uses both rules in tandem. Like, her first rule is to make herself as strong as All Might, I believe, and then she uses the second quirk to basically do whatever she needs to, and she's in a fight. Like, she was able to catch, not you, phone. She was able to catch, like, lasers with her quirk when fighting Shigaraki. She was also able to basically just do a bunch of just broken stuff and make her very overpowered, but there is a limit to what the quirk can do. For example, if she uses a quirk on someone, like, say, Shigaraki is actually a good example, because she used a quirk on Shigaraki where I think she just tried to flat out kill him, and, like, the quirk was Shigaraki will, like, die or something. And Shigaraki is going through, like, a bit of an identity crisis because he is in the process of, like, fusing with All for One. So Shigaraki just really does not know who he is, and because of that, quirks like that are directed to him, or rules that are directed to him, don't exactly work. But the fight goes on for quite a bit. Shigaraki, of course, is using his own quirks that he has, like, to his advantage. Like, he's able to, like, regenerate and whatnot, and he eventually kills Star and Stripe and takes her quirk. But before that happens, Star and Stripe puts a rule on her quirk where when it's absorbed, it will destroy itself and try to take as many quirks inside Shigaraki as it can. So this, like, severely damages Shigaraki, and he loses a lot of quirks because of that, and he spends the first few episodes just recovering after that. So yeah, they just killed off Star and Stripe, but with a quirk as overpowered as hers, it's kind of understandable why they did that. But yeah, that's the first 2 episodes focusing on her. Then the next few episodes focuses on the trader at UA, which was someone that was hinted at in, like, season 3, maybe like season 1 or whatever. But Deku actually finds who the traitor is. He is walking like on the outskirts of like I think his dorm or the outskirts of UA, and he sees Aoyama talking to his parents. And this is where we find out that Aoyama was actually quirkless, and his parents ended up coming into contact with All For One, and were able to give Aoyama a quirk to that. And this is why Aoyama, whenever he uses his quirk, why like he has the stomach issues, because the quirk is not compatible with his body, because he originally didn't have it. And because of that, Aoyama is basically the mole for All For One. He's the one that leaked where they were like during the training camp in season 3, and I think he leaked where Class 1A was like at the end of season 1 when they were like in that building when the first Nomu arrived. But yeah, Aoyama reluctantly is the traitor. He was doing it because All For One was basically threatening his parents at this point, and Aoyama is like a tearful mess. I feel really bad for him, and yeah, it's unfortunate, but Deku finds out that he's the traitor, and then Aoyama tries to run away, shoots a laser at Deku, but Invisible Girl, her name is Hagakure, she jumps in since her quirk lets her like reflect light, and we get like a brief glimpse on what she looks like, so that was neat. But because of that, Deku is able to rush in to stop Aoyama, apprehend him, and then from there, after he's apprehended, everyone in 1A, they're upset at not noticing that Aoyama was crying for help in his own way, and then they convince the adults to be like, hey, we can use Aoyama to our advantage since he is in contact with All For One, so we could lure him out that way. And then while that happens, Class 1A makes preparations, and Aizawa, he gives Aoyama like some words of encouragement after this. And, I think this is like where, like after this is where the 4th movie takes place, because the 4th movie seems to take place like after the events of season 6, and Aoyama is not in season 4, but this seems to be before like everything else in season 6, so I think this is where the 4th movie takes place, like right after Aoyama is apprehended. But yeah, then from there, I'm looking at this notepad document. There's a lot of text here. Let's see, we cut to Dabi, who has a sample of Twice's blood that he gives to Toga, so Toga can use it later, since if she ingests the blood of someone that she likes, then she can use that person's quirk, which is not good, because Twice's quirk lets him make doubles of himself, and that's not good. Shigaraki, while he's recovering, his body like starts to transform a little bit. Then Spinner, he becomes a commander for the villains. He gets to lead like an army, I guess. But yeah, then we move forward with this. Aoyama, he gets into contact with All For One, and this is where they reveal that Shinso is actually he uses his quirk to brainwash Aoyama. That way, like Aoyama doesn't lie to All For One when they're contacting each other, and through that they lure All For One out. And then All For One, he's lured out because Aoyama brings Deku with him. All For One shows up. He gets a whole bunch of villains to warp to where he is, and then Aoyama's like, "Ha! I'm actually tricking you, All For One." And then we see that Monoma from Class B. He copies Kurogiri's warp quirk and just brings a whole bunch of heroes over to where All For One and the villains are. So this basically starts the big final battle of, I guess, the series. So with the heroes and villains all in one spot, basically, where they're at, the heroes have a trap set up where these domes show up to separate the villains with a bunch of heroes, and then Monoma warps everyone to various spots all around Japan. And that's where things get really complicated because it just starts cutting away to a bunch of different scenes. Deku is supposed to be fighting Shigaraki, and he is going to the warp where Shigaraki is, but then Toga ends up lassoing Deku over, and Deku does not end up where he wants to be. He ends up where Toga is. Monoma, he ends up warping to where Shigaraki is. It's basically a UA building that is just up in the sky through technology, and Monoma is basically the MVP for most of the fight because he is copying Aizawa's quirk to neutralize Shigaraki's quirk. So basically all Shigaraki can do is hit hard with the super strength that he has. All of his other quirks don't work, and the place that they're in is actually designed to like stop Shigaraki. A bunch of panels that make up the ground will detach themselves as soon as they begin to perish. There's an electric barrier that will numb Shigaraki. It's pretty insane, and it's replenishable through like a bunch of the heroes that are underneath the arena. It's called the Coffin in the Sky. I just call it the Sky Arena or the Arena. But yeah, that's where Shigaraki is at, and while he's fighting, his body begins to mutate to adjust to the fact that he can't use his quirk, so he ends up like growing a bunch of fingers that he just uses to whack everyone. Looks pretty grotesque, but yeah, he has more than 10 fingers. So since Deku is where like Toga is, Deku has to rush over to where Shigaraki is, and for that to happen, both Uraraka and Froppy, they get in the way of Toga. That way Deku can just zoom over. And then we cut to Todoroki, or Shoto, because the rest of the Todoroki family is going to be involved, but Shoto, he's fighting Dabi, and Ida is there. That's noteworthy, because he doesn't really do much else, but he is there. I'll get back to that. We get to see more of Dabi's backstory. We get to see like what happens after he wakes up from his coma, which is like a 3-year coma, and then he just sees that Endeavor hasn't changed, and that like what sparks Toya into becoming Dabi. And yeah, Todoroki, he has a new attack called Phosphor, which combines both like his hot and cold side, like right here, makes like a cool little X shape. And then that's his way of competing against Dabi. They have like once Phosphor shows up, like their last exchange is like them hitting each other, and then Todoroki, he ends up winning that. And for a while it looks like Dabi is knocked out, but he'll come back later. Then we cut to Endeavor and Hux, who are fighting All For One, because they're the top 2 heroes and are the most qualified to fight All For One. At some point, Tokoyami and Jiro show up. So those 4 are fighting All For One. Endeavor, he ends up losing a hand, and then his last big contribution to his fight against All For One is using his Prominence Burn attack to just basically burn All For One to like a crisp, which nearly kills him. It doesn't, but it's like super close. Shigaraki, he is fighting Bakugo at this point. He's gaining the upper hand. Then Mirio, Buffaloocus as I call him, he shows up to fight, and then he fights Shigaraki with the other, with his two partners, Sasuke that eats things, and then Floaty Girl, whose names I don't remember. At some point, Mirio just like looks up to Shigaraki while they're fighting. He's like, "You don't have friends," and this actually just makes like Shigaraki, like he briefly reverts back to like his childhood self, and he's like, "I do have friends," and that's actually like a hint that like Shigaraki is like still in his identity crisis. Like he doesn't know if he's like Shigaraki. He doesn't know if he's like his younger self or if he's all for one. So like those three parts of him are like struggling for like dominance. Except like the childhood self is just like buried like deep in the subconscious. So yeah, that got to him. And then Bakugo, he levels up while he's fighting against Shigaraki. But then Shigaraki just lands one fatal blow, and I'm not sure if Bakugo dies, because like the episode definitely ended with him looking like he died. He has like an inner like imagination thing where he's like talking to All Might. It's like, "I never got you to autograph this card because I'm a fan of you," and like his parents are like, "Bakugo doesn't like rain," and like it rains, and like the last shot of that one particular episode is like the rain falling on his corpse, and I'm like, but later events make it seem like he might live, so I'm not exactly sure if Bakugo dies, but that was very shocking. So that episode ending, like ending on Bakugo's like dead body, I'm gonna think about that for a while, because I have a lot of questions. I don't know if he's gonna come back or not. We cut to Dabi getting back up, and he copies Shoto's phosphor power, and he just leaves because he's like, I don't want to fight you anymore, Shoto. I'm just gonna go to where Endeavor is because I don't want to fight him. And then we cut to All For One, who survived Endeavor's attack, and he actually found a way to duplicate Eri's rewind quirk. Eri was that girl from I think season 5 who could like rewind things, and since All For One is able to duplicate that, he reverses the damage, and he continues to just rewind until basically his prime. But he does mention that the rewind is going to continue going until he's like just does not exist anymore, so eventually he's just gonna de-age into nothing. But for the time being, he is basically in his prime. We get to see what his face looks like, and that's definitely not good. We cut to the hero Edge Shot, who can like fold himself or something. I think he's one of the top 10 heroes or something, but he goes into Bakugo's like heart to try to like sew it up to maybe make him live, and that's where like that's the last we see of like, or the last of like Bakugo being mentioned of maybe living. At least like the idea of Edge Shot like bringing Bakugo to life, like they don't go beyond that thought at all for the rest of the season. So I'm like, does he live? I really want to know if he lives or not, but for the time being, the people that are only watching the anime are going to be wondering what's going to happen to him. But yeah, Shigaraki transforms again, so that happens. Let's see. Shigaraki continues to fight the heroes that are there. Then Mirio distracts him, like just in time for Deku to show up to enter the fight. So that's neat. And the way Mirio distracts Shigaraki is I was not expecting that. But I would say if you haven't seen that particular scene, to watch it, because you will not be expecting that either. Deku, he does see Bakugo's body, and he almost loses it, but then Mirio calms him down. So that could have been a bad thing for Deku because he would have lost control of his actions, and that could have gotten him killed. But yeah, Deku and Shigaraki fight, and then we get to see Deku use the quirk that belonged to the second user for One For All. It's called Gear Shift, and the way Gear Shift works is it lets him change the speed of himself or objects around him, and that change in speed does not affect inertia, so that's pretty cool. And he uses that to basically land really powerful blows on Shigaraki at super fast speeds, and he can also like slow himself down to dodge hits too. It's just a really cool quirk the way Deku uses it. We cut to Spinner, the lizard guy from the League of Armies. He's leading an army of heteromorphs. They are basically people that their quirks don't make them look like normal people. So like Spinner is an example. He looks like a lizard. Or I would say the acid girl from 1A, the pink one. I'd say she would count as a heteromorph, but Spinner, he is basically leading an army of heteromorphs that have been like the subject of like racism and prejudice, and Spinner's goal is to invade the hospital that Kurogiri is at. And of note, Spinner has been given multiple quirks by All For One, so he is now like big lizard boy and stronger, and he actually can't handle having multiple quirks in his body, so like this causes him to just basically not be fully there. He can speak in just like short sentences, and he's not really sure of like what he's thinking, but because he's the leader of this army of heteromorphs, there's one guy who is just like shouting and speaking for Spinner. It's like, Spinner is like leading us to justice or whatever. And yeah, he's basically like having these people riot. And then we get to see Shoji. He's the one from 1A that has multiple arms, and he's a heteromorph, so we have this nice foil of him and Spinner just having similar backgrounds. They were subjects of racism where they lived, and how they let that affect them is very, very different. We get to see a bit of Shoji's backstory actually because of that, and we get to see like he's using one specific good memory he has basically fuel him in not following the same path that Spinner is. And yeah, he tries to convince the crowd to not listen to Spinner. Doesn't really work. And then Koda, the one in 1A that can talk to animals, he just has birds attack the guy that is speaking for Spinner. So I thought that was neat that he got to do something. But Shoji definitely, he definitely earned a few points in my book for like his time in the spotlight that he got. So Spinner, he ends up breaking into the hospital. He goes to the room where Kurogiri is in. He ends up getting knocked out by Present Mike, who is protecting Kurogiri. But as he gets knocked out, he does manage to reawaken Kurogiri. And then Kurogiri, he is still in Kurogiri mode. He has not been... He's still loyal to Shigaraki. He doesn't remember who he used to be when he was friends with Aizawa and Present Mike. And he then uses his quirk to just warp out of there. He warps Dabi to where Endeavor is. Then Toga, she ends up transforming into Twice, since she has that sample that Dabi gave her. She warps to where Endeavor is. Uraraka and Froppy, the frog girl, follow her. Then Toga starts to use her her transformation into Twice, and she's able to use this Twice's quirk to just duplicate her body. So now there's all of these bodies of Twice just everywhere on the battlefield where Endeavor is at. So all of the heroes that are there, they're getting trampled. And then some of those Twice bodies are actually warped over to where Monoma and Aizawa are, and that actually causes Monoma to blink momentarily while he's using Aizawa's quirk, and in that instance, Shigaraki is able to use his quirks again. So that's not good. Endeavor, he starts to fight Dabi since they're there, and then All For One, he's trying to go to where Shigaraki is, but Hawks is like, no, you can't do that. I will not let you. Which does start to annoy All For One. The arena that Shigaraki is in gets hacked, causing it to fall, and then it doesn't get hacked anymore. La Brava, that one person that was partnered up with Gentle Criminal from, I think, season 5? I think. She shows up to stop the hacking, then Gentle Criminal shows up out of nowhere to help stop the arena that Shigaraki is in from falling, and we get to see like a flashback of Gentle Criminal stopping a whole bunch of villains from escaping the prison that they were in when All For One like freed all the prisons. So Gentle Criminal like is pretty strong, because he did that all by himself. Deku then ends up just pushing him and Shigaraki out of the arena down to the ground below, where they could just fight each other alone. Except it's not really him fighting, like they're just like, Deku is using his Black Whip to restrain Shigaraki, and like they're just like staring at each other, basically. We also get to see Shigaraki, who is like talking to All For One's like, you're not in control of my body, and that's that. All For One basically, he has no control over Shigaraki anymore. Kurogiri briefly comes to his senses to save Aizawa and Present Mike from falling to their death after being like pushed down by the Twice body doubles. So yeah, there is some hope there that Kurogiri can go back to who he used to be before becoming Kurogiri. Not sure if that happens, but there's hope there. Tokoyami shows up, or he's there in the fight against All For One. He helps Hawks, and he's able to use his quirk at full power, which is pretty cool, because like, I guess it's dark enough for that to happen, because it's pretty cloudy where they're at. I think like the explanation is like the huge amount of heat like from Endeavor and Dabi is causing like, I think it's like either smoke or like weather clouds to accumulate in that area, and it's just dark enough for Tokoyami to use his Dark Shadow quirk at full power, which is insane because now he's just landing these big punches on All For One, and that actually they revealed that like with every hit that All For One takes, Rewind goes faster to reverse that damage. So yeah, he's getting younger and younger. Like we get to see him in his prime, and then eventually towards the end of the season we get to see him as basically like a teenager. So I'm very curious to see like how young All For One is going to be depicted as in the next season. There's a brief cut to Toga where it's revealed that she can't use the quirks of the other members of the League of Villains, and I guess she doesn't like them enough to be able to do that, because she tries to use Dabi's quirk, I think. Or I think she tries to use Shigaraki's quirk, but she can't use the one that she wants, and she actually ends up like becoming distraught at that. And that's noticeable because that plays into more of what happens to her later on. Gigantomachia shows up, and at first All for One's like, hey, you're here to help, but Gigantomachia just starts attacking All for One because he's upset at being abandoned. So that was neat. All for One, he's like fighting Hawks, and actually he takes Hawks' quirk. I was watching this episode with Rob and KB actually, and we were like, whoa. And I basically said they made Hawks into walks, which is a bit of a darker joke, I guess, but it was funny. And there was a comment in a video I saw that said the same thing, so I'm not the only one that thought that. But he's about to take Tokiyami's quirk, but then he's like, I'm wasting too much time doing this, so he just leaves. Mineta actually like tries to stop him from taking Tokiyami's quirk, which is admirable on Mineta's part because he's not my favorite character, but he does care for his classmates. We cut to All Might, who shows up where Shoto and Ida are, and he gives them some words of encouragement, which makes them just zoom over to where Dabi is. And the way they do this is pretty cool, because like they use Ida's quirk combined with Shoto's quirk, and then Shoto makes like a casing of ice around them that looks like a jet plane, and they just go at supersonic speeds, which I thought was really cool. But All Might shows that he has like a briefcase, and we get to see what's in that briefcase at the end of the season. Water. Doing a lot of talking here. It cuts over to Dabi, who starts to like gather a bunch of fire in him to the point where he will implode and destroy everything in like a 5-kilometer radius around him, which is not good. But the entire Todoroki family shows up to help Endeavor, who's trying to stop Dabi from doing that. And then they show like Dabi, who is basically at the brink of death. He ends up manifesting the cold side of his quirk. So it shows that he inherited his mother's quirk, and he is essentially like just like Shoto, but it took him being like near death to show that, and that shows why he was able to use Shoto's phosphor. And like Endeavor has like a breakdown at this, because like that was what he wanted out of Dabi to begin with, but like for it to manifest in that way is not what Endeavor wanted at all. Gosh, this episode was really good. Like this whole episode that focused on the Todoroki family. Dabi, he realizes, like he sees his entire family there, and he realizes that all of them noticing him is all he ever really wanted. And then Shoto shows up. Like at the last second, he uses an ice attack to just neutralize all of Dabi's fire, and Dabi is basically dying at this point. He's dying, he's cursing his family, and all Endeavor could do is just listen to him, apologize to his family, and the Todoroki family storyline is one of my favorite parts of My Hero Academia. Hands down, and this is, I don't know if this is the end of it, but this is a huge emotional climax to that, and I'm all for it. I'm getting really close to the end, which is, I don't know how long this vlog is going to be, but there's a lot that happens in the season. The next thing that happens, Toga fights Uraraka and Frappi. We get to see a little bit more into how Toga became the way she is. I mean, her parents tried to make her normal, and they went about it in the not the best way. Instead of just trying to help Toga and accommodate her needs, but what happened happened. So yeah, in the middle of the fight, Toga stabs Uraraka. They end up talking. Uraraka has a moment where she laments that, like, if they met earlier, she could have been there for Toga in her own way, and she was like, hey, if I knew you when we were younger, I could have offered you like my own blood, which is something that Toga needed to hear. And while that's happening, Uraraka's quirk gets powered up. She's able to actually make all of the twice body doubles float, and like they hit the time limit of Toga's quirk being able to copy twice, so like the twice bodies start to disappear. All the heroes are basically saved from that. But yeah, Toga transforms into Uraraka, and she since Uraraka was stabbed, like she's like about to die and like bleed out, but since Toga now transforms into Uraraka, she has the same blood, so she gives her a blood transfusion to save her. And this is actually a pretty sad realization, because I realized watching this, like, if Toga had a different upbringing, or if something different happened to Toga, she could have been a really good medical hero, I guess, because she could transform into people. Wow, she could transform into people and basically give them blood if they need it, which could save so many people. But her life didn't end up that way, and that's pretty sad. I actually started to really like Toga's character like right at the end, but as she's giving blood, like she's giving the last of her blood to Uraraka, and apparently Toga dies from that. I wasn't sure if she was gonna like live or not, but yeah, she just died, which was very shocking. And then the very last thing that happens in the season, All For One, he's flying to where Shigaraki is, but then he sees All Might. Then All Might takes out a suitcase. It's a suit of mechanical armor for him, and he becomes Armored All Might. And then the two fight. So Armored All Might, his suit, is pretty cool. It has features and just support items that replicate quirks from everyone in Class 1A. Very heartwarming to know that All Might did that, but he's holding his own against All For One, which is pretty impressive. And we get to see All Might just like trash talk All For One. One instance is like he's just punching him. He's like, "This is pretty sad. I'm a guy in my late 50s beating up a young man," and I'm like, this is funny to me. But yeah, that happens. But it doesn't happen for long. All For One eventually gains the upper hand. He ends up like starting to win the fight, but All Might doesn't back down. He starts like laughing, I guess out of joy, out of the thrill of the fight or something. But he starts laughing and he still wants to fight. And then we cut to Deku, who is still like restraining Shigaraki. And then he senses that All Might is fighting. And that's basically how the season ends. The last like caption of the season, like in the last scene, is saying like, "The next season is the last one," or something along those lines. But yeah, season ends with things getting very, very close to the end, it seems. All Might is fighting All For One. Deku is fighting Shigaraki. Dabi is like nearly dead. Spinner is knocked out. Toga's dead. We're getting really close, and I'm very curious to see how season 8 ends up. But overall, this one was a really, really good season. I enjoyed it a lot, and yeah, that's it for this recap. This vlog is going to be pretty long, I would imagine, but I do these recaps anyways, and I enjoy talking about My Hero Academia because I like it. But a lot of good moments in this. I'm glad I got to see, like, again, the emotional climax of the Todoroki family, because I think that that's a very, very good part of the series. But yeah, I'm just curious to see what's in store for the last season. Anyways, talk about My Hero Academia up to the end of Season 7. Nothing beyond that, please. And see you next time for another vlog. Outro. I need water. Later.